Hello and good afternoon, and we are continuing with the Winter Festival of the Unexplained. My next guest I'm going to bring on is the lovely Richard, and I'm just again going to thank him for his time. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring Richard forward and we can have a good old natter. Good afternoon, young man.
Good afternoon, Gary. I was going to say Richard then. I was going to Gary. Yeah, nice to speak.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and again, thanks for your time for this worthy cause. And again, we are heightening it for, you know, it is a subject that a lot of people don't talk about. And again, I think the team's done amazing and the girls have done fantastic. Yeah. So, could you introduce yourself for our lovely audience this afternoon?
Sure. I'm known. Well, my full name's Richard Case. I'm known as the Ghost Challenger. I'm often left alone in haunted buildings. I travel around the world. When we don't have COVID-19, obviously, you know, that's all at the moment, you know, not happening. But I travel around the world, and what I'd like to do is get people's beliefs in ghosts in a cultural way. So I go around and I ask from different cultures what they believe in, what their experience of ghosts are, and sort of learn from that. And sometimes I'm left alone. I say to people, I'm a bit of a skeptic, so leave me alone in the building. Let me see if anything's going to kind of push me or drag me and see what happens. But that's basically what I do as the Ghost Challenger.
Yeah, and you know, I've seen some clips and all that as well. You know, and I've been following your stuff, and I remember when you done stuff back in 2014. I went, yeah, I like the look of that, and that was obviously Calvin Hatch. When I seen you on the YouTube and all that, and I went, "Oh, this guy, very interesting for me." And
thank you.
When things take my eye, I do get drawn into it, and I go, "Oh, he's got a niche here. I need to keep on top of this." Can you tell me any of your stories around the when it started for you?
Well, it kind of goes back to probably when I was a child. I mean, I always had an interest in the paranormal from probably the day I was born, actually, or the day I was at the pram, because I remember as a child saying to where we lived in Bristol, there was the old air raid shelters, and they were in the local park, and I can remember me and my granddad going there to shelter out of the rain, and I must have been only about 3 or 4. I was very, very small, and my granddad got back and said, "You know what you said when we were shouting from the thunderstorm?" And he said to my mum, he said, apparently he turned around and said, we're keeping out of sight of the bombers, we're you know, there's an air raid. And he said that was unusual for that to come from a young mind. And I don't know if that speaks of reincarnation or previous life, but that kind of intrigued me as I got older to why I would have said that at a young age. And also the house that I lived in, I could often see what looked like the servant bells in the kitchen, and it looked like they were going, you know, by themselves, whether that was childhood imagination. But I used to love all that. My grandfather told me wonderful stories about ghosts and things, and he kind of really got me interested. And then, of course, Gary, you probably remember this, we had Hammer House of Horror and all the wonderful things that we were brought up with, and the Unexplained magazine and all those kind of things, and they all helped fuel my interest in what became, you know, towards looking for answers and searching the paranormal, really.
Our lovely Jolene said hello to you both. Good afternoon.
Hello, Jolene. Yeah.
Our Jojo, and as you mentioned there, some of the horror stories we've seen back in the films of our days, basically. Yeah. The thing that always got me was Tales of the Unexplained, Tales of the
yes.
Tales of the Unexpected.
Unexpected, yeah.
And then we go to bed at 9:30, or if we stayed up later than that, and then some of them were really quite close to the bone. Some of
they were. They were. I mean, I can remember when my parents went away, I watched a horror film, and I think it was Tales of the Unexpected, and I saw that, and basically my parents were away and my friend was round, and we were having a few tinnies at the time because we were youngsters, and he said to me, "I'm going to be frightened to death going to bed after this." I said, "Not me." I said, "I love it." And there was that element of scaring myself, and I was lying to him, because as soon as he went, you know, I did have the lights full on, and I was expecting something to show up in the patio window, or, you know, things like that, because the old horror films we watched, I think they had that way. There wasn't much around them, was there? Because now you've got so much of it and we're saturated with it. But we remember Nightmare on Elm Street and when it first came out. And when they first came out, they were quite horrific to us. They were quite scary films. So yeah, it really did set a kind of, I suppose, precedence for. I mean, I guess really what we do when we go out in the dark places, even though we're researching and we're investigating, there is an element of like a roller coaster ride that we kind of almost want to scare ourselves and get the thrill still. So I think that still is a big part of it as well.
Where I'm based in Ellesmere Port, I think one of my first fears and nightmares basically was of King Kong. I know that sounds quite bizarre.
No,
It's always like picking a narrowboat up and like trying to shake it to get me. Then you'd wake up, then, wouldn't you? So
yeah,
again, even that type of scenario of watching all our horror films and that in the past, it would bring that fear factor on. And I think again, you put the front up, I put the front up.
yeah.
You wake up and what's the matter? Nothing. I'm fine.
Exactly.
Again.
Exactly.
So again, we all hid behind them fears.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the thing we did. I mean, can I just say, Calm is a really good charity. So if anyone's watching, please do donate to it as well, because I myself, as many of my followers know, have been through depression myself, and I was a former police officer, and I did deal with these kind of issues in my job. One issue that I will quickly say, I'm not trying to go off the subject, but just to quickly go back to Calm, is I did deal with an issue where there was a young man that sadly did take his life, and I wasn't a policeman then. I was only a teenager myself, and I was walking home from the girlfriend's, and I found him, and he had said I'd taken some drugs, and he was chatting away to the Samaritans, whatever, and they were chatting, and I said, look, I need to get you an ambulance, and sadly that young man did die, and I was the last person with him. So it does, but the thing that really stays in my mind is the fact that he said, I wish I'd never done this, and those words became a headline in a newspaper, and I didn't like the fact the media were at the inquest, but his parents said thank you for that, for making it that title, because it made us realize he wished he'd never done it, and it made them feel some comfort. But it did make me think, if only he talked, if only he chatted to somebody, so I just want to say, if anyone's donating, so I'm going to donate. It's a very well worthy cause, as you say, Gary.
Yeah, much appreciated with that. And it's them little life experiences that we've all been through, everybody out there that's been involved with this as well. We all do know somebody that's affected a friend, family member as well.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that Calvert Hatch YouTube. It's intrigued me, and I have not been there yet. It's one venue I haven't actually got to.
Calvert Hatch it's a wonderful place to go to. The funny thing is, there's no real historical evidence that anything really happened there that would give it any paranormal significance that I know of. Okay. I know somebody said one of the workers allegedly died there, and it could be the worker, but there was no real evidence. But it's built on a site, so it could be from previous times before. But what was interesting was when they locked me in Calvert Hatch, they said, we want you to be on your own in there, but we're going to make it difficult for you. Normally, you'd start at the bottom where it's all really bad, and you work your way to the top, and you get out and you say, phew, I'm out. But they started me from the top, working all the way down. So I was actually going towards my fear, or going towards where everything was happening. And as I, descended into Calvert Hatch, as I got further and further to the bottom of Calvert Hatch, I mean, you probably remember I just had a lantern with me. There was one funny moment. I don't know if you remember that, because I was on my own, but I was completely honest with people. There was an event going on afterwards, and one of the people didn't get the message, and they came in to use the toilet. I don't know if you remember that. I was walking around, and suddenly I heard footsteps and thought, great, we've got something. And it was this guy using the loo. So we had to kind of go back on that. But after everyone had left, I mean, and I was just left on my own, I mean, I can remember walking down, and the tunnel at the bottom is really, I mean, I guess it is going to be eerie because it's a tunnel underground, but it's a nuclear bunker hatch that would have been used if there was a nuclear bunker. And the mannequins, I mean, the mannequins are the things that really frighten people, because you're in the dark and suddenly you go around the corner and there's this live mannequin there.
I've worked with many technical people out there in the field, and I love all the techie side of it as well.
Yeah.
And it works, in conjunction with the investigation.
Sure.
When you just had that lantern, I was like, he's onto something here, because over the years I've talked about the light sphere of going right from your infrared right up to, you know, all different light sources and that. And my friend always said to me, if you catch something with just a normal white light, you're onto it. I remember that night, if I remember, there was a shadow that walked past you.
There was a shadow that walked past me, it kind of, I think the guy that from Pigs, it was Tim from Paranormal Investigation Gathering team. Let me get that right. Pigs is Paranormal Information Gathering Service, and it was Tim that kindly did the video for me, and he got all my kind of EVPs and everything. And he said when he looked at that shadow, it could have been just a trickery where it looked like, but I thought it did really look like something went past myself. And what was ironic, I did feel something at that particular time in that tunnel when that happened. And what was strange was, for nights after that, I wasn't right myself. I didn't rush to do another solo investigation. And people said, you know, everyone says, do you have an attachment? I'm very careful with what I do. I don't know what my view is on attachment. I go in there with an open mind. I certainly don't mess around, and I'm very careful. And I have, you know, I have worked with people that have done rescue work, so I've seen all sorts of sides to everything. But yeah, that was interesting that night when you saw that shadow just go across.
I mean, obviously, we've got some viewers' comments coming in. I'll touch on them in a second.
Yeah, sure.
Covering the things in the places you have travelled. I mean, you've got USA, you've got Australia, Vietnam, Alcatraz, Hawaii, Malaysia.
Yeah.
Oh, please tell some stories.
It's very, very, very. I mean, probably my favourite place is the Philippines, because the houses are on stilts. And they believe in a ghost. It's like, I mean, all I can describe it is like it's like a vampire type ghost, and it's got it's a female figure with no body, no legs. All the entrails are sticking out the bottom of the body, and it's got a very long tongue. Now, it sounds a bit gross, but apparently it will pick on a pregnant woman, and it, you know, sounds quite crude actually, they use its tongue, but they do have a belief in protecting women at childbirth. And one of the things they do is they've got the swordfish skeletons, and they've got some of the remains on the stilts of the buildings to stop this thing climbing up the stilts of the building and getting into the buildings. And I spoke to a woman in a village about that, and that was amazing. I mean, it really they took it for granted almost, where we kind of still question a lot of things. In a lot of these countries, it was taken for granted that, yeah, they walk amongst us. When I went to India, for instance, the lady was there and she looked at me and said, well, yeah, if you go out at night, if you go near a cemetery, you're going to attract one of the dark booties, and they're going to go inside you and they're going to take you over, and you're going to cause all sorts of problems. And, you know, we know that. That's why we avoid graveyards at night. That's why we don't walk alone at night. So there was still that real belief. And I found that really good because, you know, I'm not knocking religion. I was brought up in a very strict religious family. But obviously, a lot of these countries have become like us, or, you know, missionaries have gone over and taken away their beliefs. And I want to get to their traditional beliefs. And that's what I loved. I mean, Samoa, I saw a lady in Samoa, and they wouldn't talk about it because they said, we're now Catholic and we don't talk about these sort of things. And then this lady called me over and she said, can I just quickly say, I saw what is called an atu. That's what we call a ghost. And I saw her in my village, and she appeared at my hut, and she was there. I saw her as clear as day. She was like you and I, just visible. There was not see-through. So there's loads of stories. Fascinating.
I mean, even when you touched on that, and they're putting their own symbols on to repel, you know, like spirits that they're not comfortable with. I mean, a lot of people today in the modern world will carry crystals, or you know, a grounding stone, or we'll carry a St. David's cross in our pocket, or a star as well. So getting back into their depths of their beliefs as well, that's nice to see, because you're really trying to uncover the history side of it. Yeah.
What I want to do is because I believe, you know, we live in a fascinating world, and I believe what I learned going around the world was, every culture, you make friends with somebody. You know, everybody has the same human need. I mean, when we're talking about mental health, everything else, we're all the same underneath, you know. And what is wonderful is to get their history and get their culture and try and bring that to the surface before it's buried and forgotten. Because sadly, you know, the way things are going with technology and everything else, you know, one day there could come a time where we forget these things, and that's why I like folklore and all the stories that come from the past, and old witchcraft history and everything else.
So, I mean, over the years as well, you've come across the growls, the apparitions, phones ringing, clocks
Yeah.
chiming, many religions out there, your pagan, your Wiccan, your witchcraft, which we'll touch on in a little bit, and Pendle Hill and all that. What would you say your thing that really intrigued you when you actually seen it and experienced it?
It's a very simple thing that really kind of, funny enough, it wasn't on an investigation. The one thing that really got to me personally was my own personal experience. And I said it time and time again. My father-in-law died. It was about 3 years ago now. I lost my father-in-law. I was very close to my father-in-law. I had great in-laws, and when he died, it was a tough time. And I sometimes go back as a skeptic and say, was it my mental health, or was I hallucinating and wishing he was there? And did I imagine this? But it was wonderful what happened. I remember turning around and saying, because he didn't believe in leaving wills, and he didn't believe in all that kind of thing, which I can understand completely, you know, because it was going to go to Sarah and the family. It was straightforward, and don't want to give money to all these other people, which I would be the same on. And I remember saying to him, "Oh, we've got a lot to sort out, Ken. And I miss you like mad. And I don't know how I'm going to do this." And suddenly my iPhone started ringing. And I thought, well, okay, it's ringing some, and it rang South Bristol Crematorium. Now, now that sounds kind of weird and everything, but a great joke my father-in-law used to say to me was, you know, if I said about somebody, say, "Oh, I don't know, you'll have to ring the crematorium about him now, won't you?" So that was his joke with me. You'll have to ring a crematorium. So that really touched me, and I said, "Well, is it Siri?" Because I didn't even mention crematorium. Is it on my last number? And it wasn't on my last number. So that had a profound effect on me because it was personal. Going for locations, I'd probably say I'd probably say Alcatraz was quite a profound one as well, because I kind of had the feeling of, I don't know, I almost put when I was going over on the boat to go over to Alcatraz, I put my mind in the mind of the people going over there, you know.
Yes.
And I suddenly felt that loss of freedom, that the claustrophobic kind of feeling. I don't know where it came from. I don't claim to be psychic or anything like that, but I really felt that fear and in my stomach going over, even though I was going over as a tourist. And funnily enough, the day I went over there was an ex-inmate of Alcatraz who knew Birdman and everything, and that was that one day. So I was so lucky to meet him. And he kind of explained that feeling was very common. So that kind of related to that, which I would expect. But when I spent time in some of the cells, and they kindly let me, even though tourists were still going around, they knew that I had limited time and I couldn't arrange it as I wanted to. They still allowed me to have some time in an area on my own, which was, I think, D block, which is where all the activity happened. And boy, did it feel, you could feel the atmosphere there, you know. Nothing happened, but the atmosphere did feel
intense.
Very intense. Yeah, definitely.
And I always say, and I always state, to be there, see it, sense it, change the atmosphere. And when you're there and you just know that the atmosphere is changing as well. I'll ask a few questions here. Matt
Sure,
Wood,
yeah.
touching on when you was covering about going over to foreign lands and all that, and he's just basically saying he would look into the in-depth of what was on the land prior as well.
Very much important. That's Matt, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's very important, Matt. I'm glad you mentioned that. That's definitely... I mean, I did went over to a place in Sydney, in Australia. We went to it was the old where it was a hospital. Bear with me. I just need to. I'm getting to that age where things starting to go out of my mind sometimes. So you have to bear with me, even though I know it in my head. I say it so many times. but I have a mental block sometimes.
Going over to Australia.
Yeah, it was going over to Australia. I'm almost there. Sorry about this. It really is embarrassing when this happens live on.
Okay.
And it basically was. It was a place where they would keep you if you had TB and everything else. And I'm trying to find the word for it, and that's what I can't think of at this moment.
It's like the island in Italy, isn't it? That people don't get to now.
And it was an isolation place, and you went there, and basically, one of the things I did there was I said to them, okay, that you say there's a ghost here from the hospital, but they said we're getting something else. And I said, well, do you know what was here before? And they said, well, it's an Aboriginal burial site. So that's why it's so important that you look at the history before the site was built, what was there before. And again, going back to Kelvedon Hatch, I mean, when I said nothing really happened, maybe in Kelvedon Hatch when it was there, what happened on the land, what was there. So, yeah, that's a good point what Matt made. Very good one.
Yeah, keep asking questions, folks, as well. Also, I know I've been watching a lot over the weekend as well. Can you touch on Pendle Hill, what your experiences was there? Because I've been a few times.
Yeah.
And about 6 or 7 years apart, things tied in to the second visit.
Well, Pendle Hill was funny because I actually stayed at the house where one of the witches was born. And it was a cottage, and I was lucky to have the cottage. And, the cottage did feel quite terrifying in itself. But the fact was I was going off to locations, and I was going to the local graveyard and everywhere to find out all what was going on. But one of the things that did happen, though, is, and this is a funny story, really. But you probably know the story of one of the girls was called, I think it was Alison Nutt, is it? Nutter, I think it was. That's one of the relations. I have to check that name to get that right. But I actually remember one of the witches was called that. And I made a mistake of kind of seeing, I mean, I'm not saying I follow any particular TV programs because I don't, but I remember that there was a particular farm that, everyone was used on TV. So I thought, well, I'll go and find where this area is. And I guess the guy was fed up of tourists going there and people going there. Well, I went to this farm and I thought there was no one there. It looked abandoned. So I left my car in where I thought was a safe place, got down to the bottom of the track and asked if the farm next door was that where, apparently the witches, they did it on television. Is there any story if there's stuff going on there and stuff like that? I suddenly heard this shouting at the top of the lane. And I went up the top of the lane, and my car has been shook from pillar to post almost. They're shaking my car like that. And I got up there, and it was a gentleman, and his surname was Nutter, and he apparently was a descendant of one of the witches, and he was very angry because I had parked near his entrance. So it was a genuine reason as a farmer that he was angry. And I didn't do it intentionally, but I thought it was quite funny afterwards when I thought, that anger that he showed, and they say they were angry, but obviously they were persecuted women and, all this about evil. I find very, it's a modern day take on things, because it was sad and tragic what happened to them. But I found that I met Mary Surratt, who's a lady who wrote Daughters of Witching Hill, and I recommend anyone to buy that book. And that really tells the real story of what happened in Pendle Hill. And but there was one bit I did film in, and I could feel almost like a shadow come around the car, and I was out in the middle of the woods there in Pendle Hill, and I could feel like something come around the car and surround the car, and I remember driving away quite quickly. So it's got a very strange atmosphere to that place, not just at night time but in daytime as well.
Was the one EVP or a recording? I'm just trying to recap on what I've picked up of watching your work, and that was was there one EVP that said, "I want you"?
No, there was an EVP that wasn't from Pendle Hill, mind.
Right. Okay.
One of my first EVPs I ever did was very, very clear as crystal. I actually had an old, the old tape recorders, with the old tapes and cassettes, and I preferred to go the old way, so I went and used that. Obviously, I'm very aware of the noise that the tapes make, and I'm also aware of, I have played it on radio where, I don't know if you've heard this explanation, but somebody plays random noise. It means nothing at all, but once they tell you what it means, you hear it all the time. So that's why it's important that you're very careful with EVPs. But this particular one I recorded, I went there, I said, I come with respect. I mean you no harm. And a voice said, we know, we know. And it was as clear, it was a gruff male, we know, really clear. And I played it to a load of people and I said, I don't want you to say what it says. I want you to write down what you think it says. And nearly all of them put, we know, or I know, you know, but it was around that same thing. And it was as clear as day. And I don't have the recording anymore, which I really kicked myself for. But, you know, I say to people that, you know, when you listen to these, some of these things on YouTube and you listen to the EVP recordings, I mean, they're some of them are quite nonsensical. You know, they make no sense at all. You can't hear anything. And sometimes you have to go in and find it. But this was as clear as day. And I think it's good when you do get that as a, you know, as a record.
And again, you've also, I know you're based down in the Bristol way, which I've been to a few locations down there as well. Is the Old Vic special, what was that? Was that a Halloween special?
Yeah, I did a Halloween special at Bristol Vic, and it was for children in need. And what I did was they agreed to leave me on my own in a particular area where the lady was seen. I was taken to that area and left on my own. And then I came back and said, now what we want to do is a member of the audience is to put their hand up who is up for a challenge. I said, but bearing in mind, you're going to give a nice contribution to children in need for this guy to do this. And they did. And he went and did it as well. But yeah, it's very, I went with a radio station and it was very, I think it's Mrs. McCready. Yeah, the old dressing room. Very, very eerie in that dressing room because she was very fussy. She didn't like people being around where she was. And you could almost sense, I mean, when I did it, people were all dressed up in the old period costumes. The actresses and the actors were all dressed up. So it was getting to a point where it's quite difficult to know if somebody's seen an actor or an apparition, because one lady come screaming to me, I've just seen the lady. And I said, well, you really sure it's not the actresses playing a trick? You know, and I went to them all and they were far away and they're having coffee and they said, no, it wasn't. So she could well have seen something that night. And somebody did have an interesting photograph, which is somewhere that I've got to put up again. And it shows what looks like a little boy at the top. It's not pareidolia. You can actually see a little boy's head looking down, because they used to have you know, when you get the thunders, the sounds of thunder in the theatre, you know, when you're doing a theatre production and it's that rumbling noise. Well, they used to have the thunder boys up in the gods that used to make those noises, rolling the balls across and one of the boys apparently used to be up there doing that, and they think it may have been the apparition of that. So that is a lovely place to go to. But the whole of King Street is wonderful where it's based. It's all wonderful there.
Right, I'll have to touch base down there sometime at some point when we can.
Yeah.
You mentioned radio shows as well. You've done radio shows over in the USA as well, and talk radio and all that as well. Do you want to give us an insight? What's that like?
It's okay. I mean, Americans, the USA are very different to the English. They're very different in how they. It's funny how they perceive and look at the paranormal sometimes to the way we do. I don't know if you've come across that, Gary, but they're certainly more excited and more up for it over in the States, which I love. And I wish we were more like that in the UK sometimes, because I think if I was over in the USA and you were over in the USA, me and you would be doing wonderfully, you know, because that's the place to be with the paranormal. But it's still good here. But no, the radio, I mean, I'm going on a LA radio. There's an LA radio station I'm going on the next few nights to speak to a lady. She's been on the Letterman show. She's a comedian. So I try to vary what I do. I mean, I was on a comedy show a little while ago, and that was the guy that did from Phoenix Nights, did the medium from Phoenix Night, Alex Lowe, and I was on that with him, and he's great, you know. And it was a you know, we were laughing at it, because that's what you got to do. You got to laugh at it. As long as as long as you kind of know where to draw the line. But, you know, we're talking about mental health, and laughter is the greatest medicine, I find. And, you know, that's what's kept me going through this pandemic as well. So, yeah.
On that Phoenix Night touch, I think that's where us mediums have to dig in deep and then explain the real side of it again.
Exactly.
It's not like that, you know. And
yeah.
Nice sketch, nice touch that
Well,
one.
I mean, one of the mediums I was very touched by was Derek Acora, and I was devastated when Derek died, because I met Derek, and he was a sort of person like, do you want a coffee? You know, we were sat together at one of the hotels in Liverpool with Gwen, and she's so lovely, and we were sat together, and he was like eating away, having his coffee, been interviewed, so down to earth. People don't realize how down to earth he was, and how genuine as a person he was. You know, he was really caring, very excited about what he did, and he had that kind of energy that he brought forward that, you know, just listening to him kind of cheered you up. And, you know, I know people sometimes question mediums and questions their abilities, but I understand that the pressure sometimes you as mediums are under. You know, if you're on a television show, you're put under immense pressure to get this right and get that right, and there's this lack of there's this disrespect for people that have got what is a gift, you know. And I say to my mediums, if I have any that are out with me, we're not here to test you, you know. I'm not here to test you. I don't personally have that gift, but you claim to have that gift, and if you get it wrong, don't worry about it, you know, because I mean, I have a night where I'm terrible on the radio, I'm terrible on my events. So, you know, it's respect all round. But yeah, I mean, but you know, he was a lovely guy, and we've got some good in the field, and of course you do the work as well, Gary. So,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you know,
yeah.
I've worked with Derek over the years, and we've had some, as you say, down to earth. We've had some fantastic laughs, and
Yeah.
Fish finger butties in the interval and stuff like that, and really getting to know the true gentleman behind the person as well, you know. Exactly. Which is always nice. We had Gwen on yesterday, which was a fantastic
she's lovely
hour. So you know, people, you can catch up on that as well. A few questions coming in again. Matt's put another one on there for us, Richard. Matt agrees American radio shows are very enthusiastic about the British paranormal. We had a great time doing a few of them over the last few years as well.
Definitely. That's so true, Matt. They are. I mean, that's the great thing about it, and it's that you know, when you're a guest on the show, it does make you feel a lot better when you've got the enthusiasm. Because I've been on the other side of it. I mean, I've been on talk radio, and all the presenters on talk radio are great, but I've met some presenters that are a challenge to interview. I mean, you know. Bless him, James Well. He's a lovely guy, and he's going for a lot, and I wish him well. He's a really brave soul, but James is a real challenging interviewer. You know, he'll interview and he'll say, "Well, I don't believe in it," you know, and what you're saying, and I am a skeptic, and I think he kind of likes that side, but I think James will take a lot. But he's been out with mediums and he's looked at it himself, so. But you know, some of the presenters can be quite challenging because they just completely poo-poo it, and then you're on a, you know, you've just got to know how to get around it and talk about it and discuss.
I'd done an interview the other night, and I touched on James Whale because I made a quote like, "I feel like I'm going to be James Whale tonight." I really wanted to have everything up in the air and have that open debate and discussion as well. Christopher Stone has put another question on there for you. Apart from Derek Acora, who do you feel your other favourite mediums are?
Billy Roberts. Billy Roberts. Yeah. Billy Roberts. He made a fantastic show. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a long time ago. It was a show that was you could buy it on a video. I think it was, oh gosh, James Wells was on that, and a few celebrities were on it, and they did a séance. And it was a fantastic show, and you know, he's somebody that I feel, you know, bless him, has really got his heart in the right place. So he's another one of my favourites. There are so many, really. I mean, I've got a lot of favourite, you know, or they're all good as far as I'm concerned. It's difficult sometimes to say a favourite because, you know, because of what they're dealing with. I would say, you know, that they're probably, you know, somebody I look up to. Yeah.
We covered the other night about mediumship and evidence and all that, be it quite a big evidence-based either word or photograph or anything like that. And it's just nice to see them little things that, yes, that's great. Yes, that's great as well. It just intrigues me how much we can just do it on a walk around or go anywhere and actually pick up on anything just walking down by a canal or go to an old city, an old base. where would you say your favorite city or a favorite town is that you like to have a little walk around?
I tend to love going down to Cornwall a lot. I mean, obviously now we can't do this, and that's so frustrating, but understandable with the pandemic. But I do love cities, and that I'm not too keen on. I'm more of a countryside person. Probably goes back to my grandfather living on a farm, and the old cottage that he had, and my great uncle. So it brings me back to that childhood safety, I think. So I do like that kind of thing. But there's one place that I went as a child, and believe it or not, I've not done as a researcher, and that is York. And I do want to go to York, and I kick myself every time that I've not yet, So when all this is over with, that's the place that I want to go to, because that would definitely be on my favourite list.
What I always find myself as well with likes of York is I like to get a feel for the place, so I'll go for a little walk around first, and then go back to the hotel, and then get a feel for the place or the bar that you're in, or the hotel, or anything that you're investigating. And I always feel like I go off in little pockets as and when I can. And then sometimes it's intriguing because you're receiving information, or you're getting senses of energies that you're walking around through. Have you ever come across any likes of ley lines or energies that you're walking through and think, oh, that was quite an interesting spot, or ley lines and lines, anything like that?
I'm not sure what my thoughts on ley lines are, but I've certainly come across. There's an area not far from Bristol. I can't say where it is because I've got to keep the main place quiet because they don't want to be inundated with people. But around that area, there's certainly a lot of activity, and it seems to be all around that particular area. And there is that feeling that it could be that area. And then thinking again, when I went to Pendle Hill, you had that feeling there that, it's this area that's creating this kind of atmosphere. I'll tell you one, Chew Valley Lake, there's a girl that's seen, or has been seen, a long time ago now, but she was seen around the lake, and I met one of the guys that allegedly saw her and said she was like a hologram when he saw her in the car, and he said to me that that the feeling now there's a feeling as well. You're near water, and there's a real feeling of, my wife's completely doesn't believe at all. Sarah, she completely, that's, I don't believe, and I'm a skeptic, but I keep an open mind. But Sarah's like, oh, it's rubbish, she'll say that. But we went to that area, and she said, I said, did you get that? What's that feeling you got? She said, it's like water in my mouth. I said, yeah, it's just what I had. And it was near where, this girl allegedly drowned. So, and there is also a feeling around this, so that's really weird.
I remember, as we covered on there, is even from the church around the Pendle Hill town, the village, and that, walking down towards the water, you can certainly feel the different energies as you're walking down and stuff like that. So, I can appreciate what you're saying there as well. Yeah. David put another question on there. Do you think that turning and saying to somebody that you're a medium has become more acceptable?
Well, I'm not a medium, so I'm not a psychical medium, so it's very difficult for me to probably answer. I mean, Gary, how do you feel on that? Would you say it's more?
What I generally do is I stop and pause.
Yeah.
It's like, just give yourself a little step back before you say something, and I always try and do it in a way that's down the middle. Do you know what I mean? So it's open to both sides.
Yeah.
So I, as you said earlier on, to me, there's no right way or wrong way with mediumship. You just give it as you receive it.
Yeah.
So I put questions back in, and I will ask another question on top of what I've just heard.
Sure.
Can you give me a little bit more to that before I mention this?
Yeah.
Or I sense that, I feel this, I feel that, but I will just ask the inner self, and sometimes my team come in then, and then go with that, run with that, say this. So
I wonder if what
just received.
Yeah, because I wonder what Christopher was asking was whether it's do we find it? I think what he's trying to say there, if I might be wrong, that turning and saying some of your medium has become more. So is it more acceptable? I suppose he means, is it more, do people not take the mickey so much now, or accept that we are what we are? And we still have that ridicule, like that. Even though I'm not medium, I still have that ridicule with the paranormal, and I just take it on the chin. I don't know if that's what he meant as well.
Well, also as well, I mean, me and you could be in the same room here. I could be picking up and sensing one thing, and you could be in the other corner of the room and 10 foot away and then sensing something else. And that's what I always try and explain to people. If you're on that spot at that moment in time, that is the moment of time of the energies around you, or the spirits, or whatever's going on in and around you as well. So again, it's a great question, that.
Fantastic.
Also, as well, what I'd like to cover is you've done magazines, you've done books.
No, I haven't done the books yet. I haven't done the books. The books I need to give myself a kick up the backside to do, motivation. I have been in magazines. I was in the Bristol venue and a few sort of minor little magazines that I've done articles in, and I've been in newspapers. But books is something I'm working on at the moment. So that's watch this space, and I have promised I'll try and do it this year. So I've kind of given my given the go.
You've certainly got the time to sort a book out. What would be your title for the book? Putting you on the spot.
I don't know. I'm still trying to think of it. Because I think of the name I use, also known as the Ghost Challenge. I'm thinking around the Ghost Challenge, or challenging the paranormal, or challenging ghosts, or something like that would probably be on those lines. But there are so many subjects that I've got in mind for books, and I know a lot of people at the moment are using that. A lot of people publish on Amazon, which is a good way of doing it. I mean, you only got to look at what Barry that was on talking. He's done a really fantastic book, and so is Tom Warrington as well. He's done a brilliant book on Amazon. So that could be a way, but no title. I'm still thinking.
Well, that's good. Anybody's got any suggestions out there, please add them onto this as well.
I should just mention, if I can, my friend Wayne Seedon does brilliant books, but they're not factual, they're fictional books, but they are great to read. And he does small little stories on the paranormal. Calls it Spookanorian. It's I think he's gonna do well with that. It's gonna, once he's got an omnibus of all of them together, I think it's well with someone. I mean, it's certainly worth buying now, because I've read a few of them, and they've got what it takes. So that's good.
I mean, even as part of this Winter Festival of the Unexplained, I've watched some interviews and people talking there as well, and I've learned so much. It's Friday tea time again, and it just hits home and ticks home with the information that people have got. We all work in different ways, and it's nice to share our experiences and your experiences.
Definitely. I think it's the harmony bit that's good as well, because sometimes there is that, as you know, egos in things, and then that causes people to say things online, which again is enhances mental health illness, for people, because there are other people. But I say to people, let's take the positive people in it, and let's look at the positive from it, like this event, and that's the way forward. It's like me. I've been coping with this pandemic by creating a little bubble around me almost, and looking after the child in me, and saying, I'm going to go back and read Frankenstein. I've never read the novel by Mary Shelley, and I've got this little booklet, and I'm reading that at the moment, and just getting away from the news and stuff like that. So it's a coping mechanism. But I do think it's good that we learn from each other.
Question coming in from David. Well, the question is just pointing out there. Plenty of places around Somerset that are begging to be investigated as well.
There are, David, and I've done quite a few. I mean, some of the places I've done I can't say, because what they don't want is to be publicised, because a lot of them are fearful of, loads of people suddenly turning up. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, these places are open to everyone, but there are loads of places in Somerset. Somerset's full of it. Old inns, all sorts of places. And the whole of Bristol, the whole of England, and this is why I went around the world, because the whole of the world as well, there's so many places.
Also as well, I've seen, like, with the history side of it, have you got any folklore sort of stories to tell?
Well, I mean, there was there's so much in the folklore stuff. I mean, if I'm trying to think of one particular one at the moment, I would probably say that there's a lot of folklore around the banyan tree, and there is about the yew tree as well. But the banyan tree in India, that's and a lot basically abroad. There's a lot of stories about those kind of been the trees where spirits live and things like that. That's a lot of stories about that. I mean, the yew tree as well is another a tree of life and stuff like that. In Malaysia, they believe the soul is the size of the thumb. And it haunts the grave 7 days before departing. So there's loads of these folklore things, and I do touch on a lot of these. St Mark's Eve, which is on the 24th of April, is a good one. I think it's St Mark's Eve, I got that right, is where people go to the church porch. So if you go to a church porch on that date, if you're there at midnight, you will see the people that are sadly going to die that year. So you'll see them go to their particular resting places in the graveyard. Sounds a bit depressing, this one, but you stand in the porch and you will see who's going to die. The only thing with St Mark's Eve and that thing is, once you've done that, you're sworn to do it evermore. You can't stop doing it. So that's a bit of a funny one.
Certainly as well. I mean, even where Matt touched on the lie of the land with things before, there's a castle by us, and there's nothing left of it.
Yeah.
If you go to the local church yard in the sandstone, you can see where they've used to sharpen the arrows. So there's like a run going up to that doorway of the church. You can see where they used to sharpen the arrows. Many 1600s and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I think when you go to these places, Richard, you've got to be really a knack at looking at these little things.
Have you seen the some of the magical marks in buildings? The witches' marks, the apotropaic marks, the burn marks. Protection against witchcraft. There's so much of that as well that isn't paranormal. Well, it isn't. It's things that people use as a way of protection against it. And I mean, our local church, we only went to the back of the organ, and they had a graffiti from the 1940s and the Second World War of the Sunday school children there, just doing their graffiti with a compass rather than a pen, because that's all they kind of had. So yeah, you're right. There is so much more to these locations than just ghosts and things. And I don't know if you do this, Gary, but I believe in staying at a location quite a long time as well, rather than, sometimes people will say, well, I've been to so and so, it's not haunted. And I've been there once, You
need to, the longer the better you stay there, I always feel.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched on some of these nooks and crannies in the building, basically, like to speak all by us over the water. If you're walking around and you actually listen to a guide that talks you through stuff, you've got all the monks' holes and all the hiding places, and you've got all the letters of the architects and everything tucked away in the building, and the beams, and you've got listening places. So somebody on a courtyard there, especially at Speak Hall, there's like a virtual hole in the beam, and people wouldn't notice it and think of anything of that, but that's just a little hearing place where people are talking in the courtyard.
Well, I do a lot of these talk. I haven't got my notes with me, but I do a lot of slides and I do a lot of talk with the Church Conservation Trust. I raise money for the Church Conservation Trust, and I do a lot of talks about the macabre church stories, the things that happen in the church. And one of them is the porch, where people go to the porch on St Mark's Eve and look for ghosts and
that. Janice has put a question up there. Do you ever watch Stephen Fry when he was alive?
Isn't Stephen Fry still alive? I don't know.
Well, we'll do some research on that one.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah.
on your studying side of things as well, psychology and your beliefs as well. Well, how could you explain how it takes it into an in-depth, doesn't it, when you start studying stuff, and it takes it into other stuff as well? How have you found? Because I know you've done lectures, haven't you, as well?
Yeah. I think the thing is, there is science. There's a bit of a battle going on in science with this kind of thing, with parapsychology, and you've got parapsychologists that are very good at what they do, and they still have an open mind to the fact that we don't know everything. Then there are the kind of as Richard Dawkins is with religion, you know, there's the kind that's it, you know, that's the way it is. And, you know, if I said to him, well, I had my mobile phone go, and, you know, I'm not saying that was my dead father-in-law talking to me, but that was bizarre. That moment was bizarre to me. And, you know, so, yeah, I mean, psychology can be good when you're talking about somebody maybe that has, for instance, you know, pareidolia, where you see things in clouds. And, you know, you've got a lot of these photographs and people say, can you see the ghost? Can you see the face? And we all know that the mind can make up and finish everything off. So it can be really good for things that are clearly trick of the mind. But there are still things that you look at and you say, I mean, the problem also we've got is modern technology, because modern technology is a deception, because what people can do now is they can photo fix everything. So, you know, you can have somebody say, well, that isn't a ghost, that's photo fixed. You've used one of the apps to do that. But then who's to know if that was photo fixed? Who's to know that wasn't really an apparition? And that's a difficult one, because, and so I always say to people, unless I was there and I could see it and I can look at the negatives and I can take the photograph and be there, it's very difficult for me to say if that's real or not. But yeah, I mean, I try to look at it with an open mind. So I do look at it from a cultural, historical and psychological perspective, and what we know psychologically in psychology of these kind of events. But I still think we don't know the answers, and I don't think I don't know when we will. I don't think we ever will. You know, I think we'll always be asking these questions, and you know, we've been asking it for a long time now, haven't we? So
we certainly have, and in our field and everything we do, you know, it's, to me, it's till the day I go. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing this in 20, 30 years time. Janice, did me and Colin Fry, did you ever watch Colin Fry?
Colin's a lovely guy. Colin was a lovely guy. I spoke to Colin and his partner. I spoke to them when Colin was ill, actually, and he really inspired me and encouraged me when I was going for a bad patch. And that was so tragic when Colin died. Another loss to the field. And I say gone too early. You know, these people have gone too early, and it kind of really brings it home when they're no longer there, and how much we need to take care of each other and look after each other. And I think Colin was somebody that would very much, you know, love what we're doing today, as would Derek, you know, and it is so important that, yeah, he was a great guy and sorely well missed.
Yeah, most definitely as well. And obviously I've had a few conversations with Mikey as well after the passing and all that as well. So I'll always support people out there again, and I know we are doing this for a great charity here as well. So we'll touch that back on before we finish. Matt Wood has also said in and around psychology, the Phillips experiments was parapsychology exercise as well.
Well, I will be honest with you, Matt. As much as I know everything, I know a lot of things. There's some things I still don't know, and we're all learning. And a lot of what I do is self-taught. I mean, I don't have the qualifications, so I can't call myself a parapsychologist. I don't do that. I'm not a parapsychologist, because you've got to have this particular qualifications to be one. But I've not heard of that one, so I will look that one up.
And this is what it's about, where we're
exactly.
Things, and we'll run off into that field now, and we'll have a little look into that research at that as well. And you know, we have covered a lot this weekend. I would say, Richard, if money's no object moving forwards, where are you going to go? What would you like to do?
Well, I've been thinking of going to New Orleans, just over to New Orleans, the voodoo over there. I was going to go there, but then that put a stop to it because of the virus. I'm also doing Iceland. That's had to move to next year because it's wonderful up there. And they tend to be more about the hidden folk, the elves and the dwarfs and beliefs in that, rather than the ghosts and that. They do have a few ghosts over there and stuff. But that's what they believe in. They believe in leaving bread out for the elves. And, you know, going into fairy folklore, it's very different to the fairies and the elves that we knew as children. You know, it's I think it's Richard Sugden that does a wonderful book about dangerous fairies, I think, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think I want to carry on. I mean, I did want to take a challenge in Iceland, and there's a wonderful place over there to be left in the wilderness, and I want that to happen. And I was inquiring about that, and then suddenly lockdown happened, and you know, it was all put on hold. But I know that it's coming to an end, and I know people, you know, we will get through this, so that'd be good.
Excellent. And obviously I'd like to get to that period now, to me, end of March, end of April, and then
Yeah,
we can move forward. I have got good friends that's worked over in Iceland, and they've told me a few little things
yeah.
from that time over there as well. So as again, not many people actually go over there to investigate, because I think sometimes it's about 4 hours daylight, isn't it?
It is. And I think, and that's an interesting probably from a psychological point of view, is why there isn't always the stories of ghosts, but there are certainly ghost stories over there, and there's certainly, you know, I mean, because, you know, we don't need to hold for ghosts in the day, you know, in the dark. I mean, we all know that a lot of the time it's convenience, because we may have other jobs, or it's, you know, just we like to be in the dark, you know, we like to, and you know, there really isn't a reason to not look in the daytime, and many daytime hauntings.
Also, as well, over the years, you've collected for a lot of charities yourself, is the Dame Vera Trust and stuff like that as well. And how involved are you with certain things like that? And you've done.
Well, what I do is what I do is I bring awareness to it. So when I go out and I've done my lives, I've told people to donate like this to it. So, but the Dame Vera Cerebral Palsy Trust, I went and visited it, and it's very important charity. As well. I've actually got Calm as well, which I've got a link to. I'm speaking to them about you know, that charity. I mean, there's so many, but mental health is very dear to me, because my mother died of dementia, and my mother spent many a time in mental hospital, and she took overdose when I was very young, very small. So, you know, mental health has always been a big, important thing to me, and something which I emphasize to people. Don't be ashamed of it. You know, please don't be ashamed if you're down and you need help. You know, people say on Facebook sometimes, I'm feeling like I want to end my life, or something like this. And then they say, I feel embarrassed that I said that. And I say, no, because you had to say to someone, you had to cry to someone. And thank God you did, because someone heard you and someone acted on it. So I do say to people, it's important to talk, and you know, and that charity is very dear to me. Yeah.
Excellent, and thank you for all the subjects and topics you've covered.
Not a problem. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks for the folks that's been asking questions again. Again, we are part of Calm this weekend as well. So again, please still keep giving as much as you can. If it's a penny, it's fine. If you can't afford anything, it's fine. Just please share. And I'm just going to take this pleasure to stay on with us, Richard, and then I'll end the broadcast, and then we'll have a little catch up as well. So looking forward now to the rest of the Sunday afternoon as well. But thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. That's lovely. Thank you.